because they want to, because
Right.
they have all that fuck
Yeah.
you money anyways.
And then everything costs more.
Yeah. Now I wanted to ask you about this real quick, Larry. You brought up the 4-Hour Work Week, written by the great and powerful Tim Ferris. Donovan, do you know who Tim Ferris is?
I've heard that name before.
Okay.
I've heard of this book before. I've never read
So,
it.
You heard the book? You need to read it.
yeah, you definitely got to read it. It's legit. It's super tiny. It's built for people that only have 4 hours to work. But I want to ask you about Tim Ferris because I have not about Tim Ferris, but about his overall message in the 4-hour genre of things, especially the 4-hour work week, because that's like his main joint. I walked away from that having some serious issues with that because, correct me if I'm wrong, but part of building that 4-hour work week for yourself involves a lot of outsourcing of your time. Wait, why do something yourself when you can pay somebody a small amount of money that will do that job for you, and then it's just a matter of checking in and you're good, right? And unfortunately, when you're particularly in the kind of the way he outlines the business model of, say, pushing product or whatever it is that you're going to do, it involves outsourcing generally outside the country because we don't have competitive wage markets in America.
100%.
I don't like the concept of hooking yourself up so on at the expense of the rest of the American economy, if you will. If everybody was doing the Tim Ferriss 4-hour work week, we end up in the same boat with supply shortages and shit like that if anything goes haywire at any time, because 100% of your product and your workflow is outsourced overseas, which is how you're able to make that time and make that money.
Yep.
I on black and white, on paper, it really makes sense. If you're looking at the bottom line, that's the way to do it, which is why we don't make anything in America anymore and we rely on all these other countries. But thankfully, there is a new economy that has grown up and it's still in its infancy on the internet. So I think there's a way around that where you can build an economy much more locally, but yet globally, because everybody's working on the internet at that point. Fairly soon, I would project that most people's workforce, their labor participation, all that will mostly be online anyways. Because you only need a few people to make things, and soon enough we'll automate all those jobs anyways. But that's my main kind of point of contention when I was going through that book. And I was like, yeah, this is a great idea, and I would love to do that. You just got to come up with an idea and a product, and you got to market it, and then you outsource all this stuff. And then you just sit back and you have passive income forever, and then you're just chilling. But like morally, ethically, I had issues with the idea of outsourcing all that labor because I would rather pay Americans to do that. But that also means that I have to suffer on the back end with a smaller bottom line. Where are you at in that realm of thinking?
So where I've kind of got is combining what he's helped people build, which is basically what he's saying is I read it differently than you, right? You said outsource and make the thing cost less. I read it as I need to raise the level of value I'm providing to get to a higher ticket item thing, right? And so you see it in my industry where I go from just doing tax returns to being like an outsourced CFO of the company. Mm-hmm. And then I do go in with the, hey, I need to eliminate, but I've taken a more the company first form, Andy Frisella approach, where I hire people who are going to help me grow to something bigger. And so I think people who want to make that $10,000 to $20,000 a year, $40,000 a year, are going to get a ton of value out of hiring people from overseas to do short-term things. But you've talked to people overseas, especially when you talk to phone companies. Yeah. What happens? You get mad, right? You don't want to talk to people. You want to talk to people. You want to work with other people. It's horrible. And so as you try to expand your vision for what you're trying to build, you realize you can't go overseas. You can't outsource it to the cheapest person because you're going to lose out, right? And you see it even more just in your job, like because you work in a very niche thing that even like we were joking about last time, like I don't even understand it, but like imagine continuously outsourcing that to save money. You're going to pay for it on the back end. And so I hear you. I took from it like the tool rather than like how he did it. But you're right. Like I think it's going to come with like the progression. You're like, hey, we're in the future, but I think we have to be prepared that like those low level base 1, 2, 3 tasks, they're either going to get automated by a machine or we're going to outsource them, right? And so what we have to do is continue to expand our vision to then have jobs, wages, things for people who won't want to be at our certain level. And so I like it because it's going to lead to bigger things, but you're like, it's never going to be perfect, especially in an economy.
Yeah. Maybe when I think about that, I think about physical product where there has to be something made, packaged, sold, and marketed. Whereas something that, like in your general, area of work, and is more, I mean, it's less, I don't want to say tangible, but it's not as physical. It's a lot
Service,
of,
yeah, it's 100% service.
Yeah, it's a service industry versus like manufacturing a product.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that completely changes the calculus on that, because yeah, you can sell an intellectual product or a service anywhere on the internet like that. And so I could see it definitely. Yeah, I must have been too, because when I went through it, I was working at Benek at the time, so I was like, manufacturing was like in my head, and that's where I was at. It's like, I'm gonna make the greatest thing. Don't know what it is yet, but I'm gonna make it, and then I'm going to have it made over in India, and all my customer service is going to come from overseas because it's way cheaper and it all works. And it's just, you give them the checklist and everything happens, and then you just stand back and you watch your bank account grow. While you spend 4 hours a day, no more, just taking care of shit, and everything's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, once you depart from that physical material, product way of thinking, then the whole calculus totally changes. Yeah, in which case, that's great.
Yeah, and you kind of see it with your business. Like, where you started when it was just you kind of grinding, it's completely different when you're talking about you bring on people, and then you kind of see the customer service. And I think, again, I know from I hate all cell phone companies. Like, as soon as I find a cell phone company that treats me right, I'm switching instantaneously, because I loathe AT&T, but I'm kind of just stuck because they have a monopoly. But like,
it's terrible.
Something simple, right? They pass you from machine to robot to
my
India,
first job was at the call center in Bremerton, and it was, at the time, it was owned by a company called Concentrix that was a contractor for Sprint. So we did Sprint customer service, and I worked there for a year and 8 days, and it was by far the worst job I've had. That was my very first job. So that was in 2013, and I still remember exactly how long I worked there, because it was the worst fucking job I've ever had.
Jesus.
I've always wanted to be like I've always wanted to be a long haul trucker, and I'm starting to get the feeling that if I don't do it now, I'm never going to get the chance, because that entire industry is going to be
too late.
It's going to be gone.
Yeah, so that's only to say your point is correct, that every cell phone company is terrible, because after I worked there, I vowed I'm never going to have Sprint, because Sprint is so fucking terrible. So I have AT&T. AT&T is horrible. I've had the same. I've had very similar issues with them that I had with customers at Sprint. I don't know what to tell you. Sorry, I can give you $15. Well, my bill is fucking $150. So what the fuck does that do for me? Exactly. So I don't give a fuck about your $15. I didn't even pay the taxes on my bill. So why the fuck do I want that?
Well, I'm thinking about there's that Ryan Reynolds company, Mint Mobile.
It's not worth it. To go to any other company is not going to be worth it.
Well,
it's
see, what I'm thinking of,
I'm telling you.
I want to get a burner phone, essentially.
Okay.
And I'm like,
wait, what's this company?
Mint Mobile. It's Ryan Reynolds owns it.
It's like Cricket. It's another one of these micro companies that uses the towers of another provider, which gives you subpar service because you are not given the same priority on those towers.
Well, I would caveat it by saying,
I can guarantee it.
T-Mobile used to be the exact same way. Now T-Mobile's one of the major players. They have fought hard. I used to talk tons of shit on T-Mobile.
So let me counter you.
Okay.
Right? To counter your assertion, because I did work at the call center, there are two different forms of cell phone service, right?
Damn it.
There are CDMA towers and GSM towers, right? What? Sprint, yes. So Sprint and AT&T, I think, both work off of CDMA towers. T-Mobile and Verizon both work off of GSM towers. The GSM towers are also what are used predominantly internationally. So part of T-Mobile's dominance as a company comes from their ability to be used more prominently throughout the globe. You can have an AT&T or have a T-Mobile phone, and for a long time, it was easier to use your T-Mobile phone overseas than it was to use your AT&T phone overseas or your Sprint phone overseas.
Yeah, it still is.
Interesting.
When I was in Germany,
Still is.
I had to.
So
buy
that's
a
insider
whole
knowledge.
Insider knowledge.
No, 100%. Like when I was in Germany, we had to buy a whole new SIM card,
Yes.
and all the T-Mobile people had like a plan to where they could
Yes.
just transfer their T-Mobile like SIM like that day, and so
Yes.
they could have it instantaneously.
Because
It's like 10 extra.
all
dollars.
those other countries, I'm going to say 90% of the other countries that have like broad cell phone service use GSM towers. And so
Interesting.
all you have to do is they just flip a switch on their end, the carrier end, to give you international access. And you are then effectively internationally roaming for a lower rate because you are able to just access their towers. So
Already there.
it's a much easier deal. We used to charge people tens or hundreds of dollars for international roaming charges because you had to unlock your phone or do this or do this or do this, or we had another cell phone that you could buy that would also work with the GSM towers, and it was a whole deal. It was a fucking racket. Yeah, it was.
Okay, so GSM stands for Global System for Mobile
There you go.
Communication. One of the biggest differences between these two systems is that GSM phones use SIM cards to link a particular phone
that's what it was.
with the network.
That's
while
what it was.
CDMA phones don't require a SIM card because the phone itself is linked to the network.
Yes, so that's
is-
what it was.
And that's why, like, there's, and honestly, I'm not going to remember which one it is, but like, for a while there, it's like, if you had this carrier, you had a SIM phone, you had a SIM card in your phone. Whereas if you had the other carrier, you were like, what the fuck's a SIM card? I just buy the phone and then I'm good.
So I had it backwards. It's AT&T and T-Mobile and Sprint and Verizon.
Okay.
So I had it backwards. But either way,
I
that is
just-
part of what lends to T-Mobile's dominance in the market is their global accessibility. And also because they're on the same towers as AT&T and T-Mobile also have the broadest amount of 5G access because they're working collectively to build that network.
Welcome to the south of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought.